Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. Brigham Young was an interesting and important religious and political figure in mid 19th century American history, but one who probably doesn't get the study and scrutiny that he's due. For LDS faithful, the troubling aspects of Young's life are often overlooked, and for non LDS members, Young is probably ignored as he's seen to be simply a religious leader of somebody else's religious denomination. Let's look at a thumbnail summary of his biography from Wikipedia for a moment. Brigham Young, June 1st, 1801 to August 29th, 1877, was an American religious leader and politician. He was the second president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church, from 1847 until his death in 1877. During his time as church president, Young led his followers, the Mormon pioneers, west from Nauvoo, Illinois, to Salt Lake Valley. He founded Salt Lake City and served as the first governor of the Utah Territory. Young also worked to establish the learning institutions which would become the University of Utah and Brigham Young University. A polygamist, Young had at least 56 wives and 57 children. He instituted a ban on prohibiting the conferring of priesthood on men of black African descent and led the church in the Utah War against the United States. Okay, so he had 57 children, 46 of whom reached adulthood. In 1902, the New York Times estimated that Young had more than 1,000 descendants, and by 2016, he was estimated to have around 30,000 descendants. Now, obviously, the patriarch of a family is not necessarily responsible for the acts of his descendants, nor are the descendants to blame for any transgressions of the patriarch. But I do find genealogical research to be an interesting hobby, and I find it interesting to look at what became of the children and the descendants of great men and women in history. That being said, anything discussed here is, of course, no commentary on the theological or historical beliefs or activities of the LDS Church or anything along those lines. But with that many children and descendants, you know that there's going to be some highly accomplished progeny, as well as some involved in more salacious activities. For instance, did you know that the science fiction writer Orson Scott Card is a great-great-grandson of Brigham Young? On the other end of the spectrum of Young descendants' accomplishments was William Hooper Young, a grandson of Brigham, who is known as having been convicted of the Pulitzer murder in New York City. So what's the story? Hooper Young was born in Salt Lake City, Utah Territory. He was the son of John Willard Young, an apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church. Hooper Young was a grandson of Brigham Young, the president of the LDS Church and founder of Salt Lake City. As a young adult, Hooper Young became an elder in the LDS Church, and in 1891 and 1892, he was a Mormon missionary in the eastern United States. In 1893, Young left Salt Lake City and began moving from city to city and from job to job. During his travels, he lived in Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, Chicago, New York City, Washington, D.C., and Hoboken, New Jersey. Young drifted away from the LDS Church, and according to his relatives in the Utah Territory, he became a morphine addict. There were also rumors that he had left Salt Lake City because he had killed someone. On September 19, 1902, the body of Anna Pulitzer was found in the Morris Canal outside Jersey City, New Jersey. Her abdomen had been stabbed and there was bruising on her head. Pulitzer was married but had been arrested a number of times for solicitation of prostitution. A New York cabman was found who claimed that a few days previously he had taken Pulitzer and an unknown man to an apartment in New York City that was the home of Young's father, John Willard Young. In the apartment, police found empty beer bottles, a bottle with chloral hydrate crystals in it, a carving knife with blood on it, and blood on bed sheets, in a closet, under the kitchen sink, and on the floor and walls. There was blood. The word blood atonement was scrawled in a notebook, and underneath were several references to verses in the Bible that discussed atonement for crime. It was determined that Pulitzer had died of a drug overdose from chloral poisoning, and that the head bruising and abdomen stabbing occurred after her death. It was discovered that John Willard Young had been in France when Pulitzer had disappeared, but that Young's son, Hooper, used the apartment when he was away. Hooper Young was arrested in Derby, Connecticut, where he was found drunk and dressed like a hobo. Initially, Young denied his identity, but eventually he admitted who he was. Young claimed that he, Pulitzer, and a third person named Charles Simpson Eileen had been in the apartment on the night of Pulitzer's death, and that when he had temporarily left the apartment to purchase whiskey, he returned to find Pulitzer dead. Young said that Eileen had murdered Pulitzer, and that he had decided to help Eileen hide the body because he was afraid of disgracing his father when the matter became public. Young said he tried to cut Pulitzer's body up into small pieces, but that after he made a cut to the abdomen, he lost his nerve and was not able to do it. He did not admit to dumping Pulitzer's body in the canal, but he indicated that he was aware of what had happened to the body. A search was made of Charles Eileen, but nobody of that name could be located. When the New York newspapers discovered that the prime suspect in Pulitzer's murder was the grandson of Brigham Young, much speculation began about the motive for the murder. Because of references to blood atonement that had been found in the apartment, some speculated that Pulitzer had been killed in accordance with the Mormon principle of blood atonement, whereby a person atones for sinful behavior through the shedding of their own blood. Others suggested that Young and Pulitzer had an illicit affair years earlier when Young was a Mormon missionary in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, which was Pulitzer's hometown. The actual motive for the murder was never determined. Young's murder trial began in New York City on February 4th, 1903. Young pleaded not guilty. His trial commenced, but on February 10th, Young told the court that he was willing to plead guilty to second-degree murder. The judge accepted the plea and sentenced him to hard labor in state prison for the duration of his natural life. The judge stated that he was not willing to impose the death penalty because medical experts had suggested that Young was probably medically, though not legally, insane. Because a full trial was not completed, Young's motives or the truth behind his claims about another man being involved were never fully examined in court. Young served his sentence at Sing Sing in New York. In early 1924, Young was paroled. He was living with his father in New York City when his father died in February 1924. In 1928, Hooper Young was in Fair Oaks, California, reportedly trying to locate one of his half-sisters. The Social Security claim was made by a William Hooper Young in June 1937 on an account that listed his parents as John W. Young and Elizabeth Canfield. In 1938, Folsom Prison records in Sacramento, California, list a William Hooper Young sent there from Los Angeles, California. The record indicates that Young was a salesman and that he had formerly been incarcerated at Sing Sing in New York. The part of the California Code that he was incarcerated under involved oral copulation and at the time may have included lewd acts with a minor. The date and place of Young's death are unknown. So that's the story as it's known to history at this point. Certainly a lot of opportunity for amateur history sleuths to track down more details about his later life in California. I've done many videos on unsolved mysteries such as the D.B. Cooper skyjacking case or Jack the Ripper, but this is the first true crime video that I've done where the perpetrator was apprehended and convicted of the crime. Would you be interested in me doing more such videos? If so, leave a comment in the comment section below, and please do hit the like button, and hopefully by now you've subscribed to my channel. And check out my other videos that range from movie and book reviews to looking at unsolved mysteries to personal finance and stock investing. Thanks so much.